April 9th, 1241. The fields outside Liegnitz, in what is now Poland, are silent. Too silent. Duke Henry II of Silesia stands at the head of 20,000 men, the largest Christian army assembled in Eastern Europe. Knights in shining plate armor, German crusaders, Polish cavalry, Teutonic warriors, the finest soldiers that Christendom could muster. They came here to stop an invasion unlike anything Europe has ever seen, because marching toward them across the plains of Poland is something that defies everything medieval Europe believes about warfare. Something that has already destroyed every army it's encountered. Something that swept across half the known world in just 20 years. The Mongol Horde. And today, on this quiet April morning, 20,000 European knights are about to learn a brutal lesson. That armor, chivalry, and 1,000 years of martial tradition mean nothing against an enemy that fights like no one you've ever faced. By sunset, the fields will be soaked red with blood. Duke Henry's head will be mounted on a spear. And Europe will realize far too late that the nightmare from the East isn't a legend, it's real. And it's already here. This is the story of the Battle of Liegnitz. The day Mongol arrows tore through European steel, and the West came within a breath of falling under the hoof of the greatest empire the world has ever known. The Mongols had arrived at the gates of Europe, and no one was ready. The year is 1237. Thousands of miles to the east, in the endless steppes of Central Asia, the Mongol Empire is unstoppable. Under Genghis Khan and his successors, the Mongols have built the largest contiguous land empire in human history. They've conquered China. They've shattered Persia. They've burned cities that had stood for 1,000 years and left nothing but ash and bones. Now, they turn their gaze west. Leading the invasion is Batu Khan, grandson of Genghis, commanding an army of perhaps 150,000 warriors. With him ride Subutai and Kadan, two of the greatest military commanders in history, men who've never lost a battle, men who move armies across continents like chess pieces. Their target? Everything. The Mongol strategy is simple and terrifying. Total war. Burn everything. Kill everyone who resists. Enslave the survivors. Leave behind a wasteland so complete that grass won't grow for generations. In 1237, they cross the Volga River and invade the Russian principalities. What follows is annihilation. The Mongols don't fight like Europeans. They don't line up in formation and charge. They don't believe in honor or fair combat. They are a machine of war, perfected over centuries on the steppes, designed for one purpose: to kill. Ryazan falls in 5 days. The entire population, men, women, children, slaughtered. Vladimir falls, Suzdal falls, Moscow burns to the ground. The Mongols move through Russia like a wildfire, and every army sent to stop them is crushed. Russian princes, who've spent generations fighting each other, suddenly realize they're facing an enemy that makes their petty wars look like children playing with wooden swords. By 1240, Kiev, the mother of Russian cities, the heart of Eastern Slavic civilization, is besieged. The Mongols surround it with siege engines, catapults that hurl boulders, and burning pitch. They breach the walls and pour into the city like a flood. The cathedral, where thousands of civilians took refuge, collapses under the weight of people trying to escape. The screams can be heard for miles. When the Mongols leave Kiev, there are fewer than 200 buildings left standing. Tens of thousands are dead. The city that once rivaled Constantinople in splendor is now a smoking graveyard. And the Mongols? They barely slow down, because Russia, was just the beginning. In early 1241, the Mongol army splits into two massive columns. One, under Batu Khan, turns south toward Hungary. The other, under Kadan and Baidar, wheels north and west, straight toward Poland and the Holy Roman Empire. Europe has no idea what's coming. Medieval Europe in 1241 is a patchwork of kingdoms, duchies and city-states, all constantly at war with each other. The Pope is feuding with the Holy Roman Emperor. The French are fighting the English. The Germans are fighting everyone. No one is paying attention to the East. Oh, there are rumors. Stories from terrified refugees fleeing Russia. Tales of an unstoppable army of horsemen who rain arrows like a storm, who move faster than any Christian army, who show no mercy. But these are dismissed as exaggerations, barbarian nonsense. How dangerous could a bunch of nomads on ponies really be? The Europeans are about to find out. The first warning comes in March 1241, when the Mongol vanguard appears in Poland. They move like ghosts. One day, they're 100 miles away. The next, they're burning villages outside Krakow. Polish scouts report thousands of horsemen, moving in perfect coordination, destroying everything in their path. Duke Henry II of Silesia, one of the most powerful nobles in Poland, realizes the threat is real. He sends out a call for aid to every Christian kingdom within reach. The Horde is here. We must unite, or we will fall one by one. But unity takes time, and the Mongols don't give you time. By late March, the Mongols have burned half of southern Poland. They're using a tactic they've perfected, the Nurge, a massive sweeping operation where they spread out in a vast arc, driving everything before them like a hunt. Towns that resist are erased. Populations are massacred or enslaved. The Mongols leave behind a trail of burned villages and mass graves. Krakow, one of Poland's greatest cities, is sacked. Thousands are killed. The Mongols strip it of valuables, then burn it to the ground and move on. They're not interested in conquest. Not yet. This is a raiding campaign. Hit hard, move fast, destroy everything, and force the enemy to chase you. And it's working. Duke Henry gathers his forces at Liegnitz. Reinforcements are coming. King Wenceslaus of Bohemia is marching north with 50,000 men. If they can link up, they'll have a massive Christian army, perhaps 70,000 strong. But the Mongols know this, and they have no intention of letting those armies unite. On April 8th, Mongol scouts report that Duke Henry's army is camped outside Liegnitz, waiting for the Bohemian reinforcements. The Mongol commanders, Kadan, Baidar, and Orda, make a decision. They'll attack immediately, before the Bohemians arrive, before Henry can retreat. They'll force a battle on their terms, and they'll destroy him. On the night of April 8th, the Mongol army moves into position, roughly 20,000 cavalry, light horse archers, heavy lancers, and scouts. They move silently through the darkness, spreading out into their battle formations. Duke Henry's army, camped a few miles away, has no idea they're about to be hit. April 9th, 1241. Dawn breaks over the plains of Liegnitz. Duke Henry's forces are impressive. Perhaps 20,000 to 25,000 men. The army is a mix of the best Europe can offer. Polish knights in heavy armor, riding massive war horses bred for shock combat. German crusaders, many of them veterans of campaigns in the Holy Land, armored head to toe in chainmail and plate. Teutonic knights, the elite warrior monks of the order, some of the finest heavy cavalry in Christendom. French Templars, volunteers who came east to fight the heathen Horde, and thousands of infantry, spearmen, crossbowmen, and peasant levies. It's a formidable force. On paper, They should win. But war isn't fought on paper. Henry's army forms up in the traditional European style. Heavy cavalry in the center, infantry on the flanks, crossbowmen in reserve. It's the same formation that's won battles for centuries. Charge forward, break the enemy line, ride them down. Simple, effective, proven. Except the Mongols don't fight like that. Across the field, the Mongol army spreads out in a loose, fluid formation that makes no sense to European eyes. There's no solid line, no massed ranks, just scattered groups of horsemen riding back and forth, seemingly disorganized. The Europeans assume the Mongols are confused, undisciplined. This will be easy. They have no idea what's about to happen. The battle begins with a Mongol feigned retreat, one of their signature tactics. A small group of Mongol light cavalry, maybe 1,000 raiders, appear on the Christian right flank. They fire a few volleys of arrows, then turn and gallop away as if panicking. It's bait. The Polish knights, eager for glory, see the retreating enemy and charge. Lances down, armor gleaming, they thunder across the field, certain they're about to ride down a broken, fleeing foe. The Mongols keep running, just fast enough to stay ahead, just slow enough to keep the knights chasing 1 mile, 2 miles. The Polish cavalry is now separated from the main army, strung out in a long, disorganized pursuit. And that's when the trap springs. From the flanks, hidden in the tree line and tall grass, thousands of Mongol horse archers appear. They wheel around the sides of the pursuing knights and unleash a storm of arrows. Not a few arrows, not a volley, a hurricane. Mongol composite bows are short, recurved weapons made of wood, horn, and sinew. They're incredibly powerful, capable of punching through armor at close range. And Mongol archers are trained from childhood. They can fire accurately at a full gallop. They can shoot behind them without slowing down. They can loose 10 to 12 arrows per minute. Now imagine 5,000 of them firing at once. The arrows darken the sky. They slam into the Polish knights from 3 sides. Horses scream and fall, throwing riders. Arrows find gaps in armor, the joints at the elbows, the visors of helmets, the unprotected flanks of horses. Knights try to wheel around, but the heavy war horses are exhausted from the chase. The Mongols dance around them, firing, retreating, firing again. It's not a battle, it's a slaughter. Within minutes, hundreds of Polish knights are down. The rest try to retreat back to the main army, but they're scattered, disorganized, panicking. And the Mongols aren't done. Duke Henry watches from the center of his line as his right flank collapses. He has to act fast. He orders a general advance. The entire Christian army, 15,000 strong, begins moving forward. Heavy cavalry in the lead, infantry following behind. It's an impressive sight. Thousands of armored knights, banners flying, moving in formation toward the enemy. This is what European warfare is all about. The shock charge. Slam into the enemy with overwhelming force and break them. But the Mongols have seen this tactic 100 times before. In Persia, in Russia, in China. And they know exactly how to counter it. As the Christian cavalry charges, the Mongol horsemen split apart like water flowing around a rock. They refuse to stand and fight. They give ground, firing arrows the entire time, always just out of reach. The Europeans keep charging. They have to close the distance. If they can just catch the Mongols, they can crush them in melee combat. But the Mongols won't let them. Mongol horses are smaller than European war horses, but they're faster, more agile, and have far better endurance. A Mongol warrior can ride for days without rest, changing horses as they tire. European knights in 60 to 80 pounds of armor on horses bred for power rather than speed can't keep up. The chase goes on and on. The Christians are getting tired. Horses are foaming at the mouth. Knights are overheating in their armor under the midday sun. And all the while, arrows keep falling. Not every arrow kills, but they don't have to. A wounded horse throws its rider. A knight with an arrow in his shoulder can't fight effectively. Slowly, gradually, the Christian army is being bled to death. And then the Mongols reveal their second trick. Among the Mongol forces are specialist units equipped with gunpowder weapons, early smoke bombs and noisemakers, primitive explosives that create massive clouds of thick, black smoke and terrifying noise. Suddenly, the battlefield is engulfed in smoke. The Christians can't see. The sound of explosions terrifies the horses. Formations break apart as men lose sight of each other. And in the chaos, the Mongol heavy cavalry strikes. The Mongols aren't all light horse archers. They also field heavy lancers, warriors in lamella armor, carrying lances and swords, trained to fight in close combat when the moment is right. That moment is now. Out of the smoke, Mongol heavy cavalry slams into the disorganized Christian lines. They hit like a battering ram, targeting the flanks and rear, exploiting every gap. The European infantry, already exhausted and demoralized, begins to break. Men throw down their weapons and run. Officers scream orders that no one can hear over the chaos. Duke Henry, in the center of the collapsing formation, realizes the battle is lost. He orders a retreat, but it's too late. The Mongols have encircled the Christian army. Small, fast units of cavalry have swept around the flanks during the fighting, cutting off escape routes. Now, the Europeans are surrounded. And surrounded armies don't surrender to Mongols. They die. What follows is a massacre. The Mongol cavalry closes in from all sides, firing arrows into the packed mass of Christian soldiers. Men fall by the hundreds. Those who try to break through the encirclement are run down and cut to pieces. Duke Henry and his personal guard try to fight their way out. They make it a few hundred yards before they're overwhelmed. Mongol lancers surround them, pulling knights from their horses, hacking them down with swords and axes. Henry himself is killed in the melee. Some chronicles say he was beheaded on the spot. Others claim he was captured and executed moments later. Either way, by mid-afternoon, Duke Henry II of Silesia is dead, and with him dies any hope of stopping the Mongol advance. By evening, the Battle of Liegnitz is over. The field is a nightmare. Bodies lie everywhere. Thousands of them. Most are European. Knights in shattered armor, horses with arrows bristling from their flanks, infantry cut down as they try to flee. The Mongols suffer losses too, but they're light. A few, 100 dead perhaps. Nothing compared to the annihilation they've inflicted. After the battle, the Mongols follow their standard practice. They count the dead. Mongol commanders need accurate casualty reports, so they order their soldiers to cut off the right ear of every enemy corpse. According to some chronicles, they collect 9 sacks full of ears, suggesting at least 20,000 European dead. Duke Henry's body is identified. His head is cut off and paraded around the battlefield on a spear, a grim warning to anyone who dares resist. The Mongols then march to the nearby town of Liegnitz and display Henry's head on the city walls. The message is clear. This is what happens when you fight us. The surviving European forces, those who manage to escape the encirclement, flee west in terror. Within days, word spreads across Europe. The Christian army is destroyed. The Mongols are unstoppable. King Wenceslaus of Bohemia, marching north with his 50,000-man reinforcement army, hears the news and immediately turns back. He refuses to engage the Mongols. His advisors tell him it would be suicide. He's right. 2 days after Liegnitz, on April 11th, 1241, the other Mongol army, the one that invaded Hungary, wins an even more devastating victory at the Battle of Mohi. There, 20,000 Mongols under Subutai and Batu destroy a Hungarian army of 60,000 men. The Hungarian king barely escapes with his life. Tens of thousands of soldiers are slaughtered as they try to flee across the Sajo River. In the span of 48 hours, the Mongols have destroyed the two largest Christian armies in Eastern Europe. Nothing stands between them and the heart of Western Europe. Vienna, Prague, Rome, Paris, all of them are now within reach. And the Mongols have never been stopped. Europe is paralyzed with fear. Refugees flood westward, bringing stories of the Mongol atrocities. Entire regions are depopulated. Cities fortify their walls and pray. Pope Gregory IX calls for a crusade against the Mongols, but no one answers. The kings of Europe, who spent decades fighting each other, suddenly realize they have no idea how to fight this enemy. The Mongols don't besiege castles for months. They don't challenge you to honorable combat. They just burn everything and move on. How do you fight an enemy like that? For the next year, the Mongols continue their rampage through Eastern Europe. They raid Austria. They probe the borders of the Holy Roman Empire. They burn Hungarian villages by the hundreds. Europe is defenseless, and then, suddenly, the Mongols stop. In December 1241, news reaches the Mongol commanders. Ogedei Khan, the great Khan of the Mongol Empire, has died in Mongolia. By Mongol law, all princes and generals must return to the capital, Karakorum, for the election of a new Khan, Batu, Kadan, Subutai. All of them turn their armies around and begin the long march back east. The invasion of Europe is over. Not because Europe defeated them. Not because they ran out of supplies. Not because they were stopped by superior tactics or bravery. They left because a man died 5,000 miles away. Europe didn't win. It got lucky. If Ogedei Khan had lived another year, the Mongols would have reached Paris, London, Rome. The entire history of Western civilization would have been erased. The Battle of Liegnitz wasn't just a defeat. It was a warning. It exposed the fundamental weaknesses of medieval European warfare. The reliance on heavy cavalry. The lack of coordination between kingdoms. The arrogance that assumed European knights were the finest warriors in the world. The Mongols shattered all of those illusions in a single afternoon. European military tactics would begin to change in the decades that followed. Lighter cavalry, more emphasis on missile troops, better scouting and intelligence. But it took generations for those lessons to sink in. In Poland, the memory of Liegnitz haunted the region for centuries. The battlefield was considered cursed ground. Locals reported hearing the screams of dying men for years afterward. Duke Henry became a martyr, a symbol of Christian resistance against the heathen invaders. But the truth is, he wasn't a hero. He was a victim of an enemy he didn't understand, fighting a war he had no chance of winning. The Mongols, meanwhile, returned to their empire and turned their attention elsewhere. They would never invade Europe again. Political infighting, the conquest of China, and campaigns in the Middle East occupied them for the next century, but they left behind a legacy of terror that Europe never forgot. The Battle of Liegnitz proved something terrifying, that an entire civilization, 1,000 years old, could be brought to its knees by a nomadic people whom most Europeans had never even heard of. It proved that technology, discipline, and tactics matter more than honor or tradition. It proved that Europe was not the center of the world. It was just another target. And if the Mongols had wanted to, they could have conquered it all. April 9th, 1241. 20,000 European knights stood on a field in Poland and told themselves they were invincible. By sunset, most of them were dead. And the Mongols? They barely slowed down. Liegnitz wasn't the deadliest battle the Mongols ever fought. It wasn't even the largest. But it was the moment Europe realized something terrifying. The world was bigger, more dangerous, and far more brutal than they'd ever imagined. And the Mongols? The men who'd conquered half the known world in a single generation, had come within a hair's breadth of adding Europe to their list of victories. The fact that they turned back wasn't a triumph of European strength. It was blind, dumb luck. And if that one man hadn't died in Mongolia, if Ogedei Khan had lived just one more year. You might be reading this in Mongolian. April 9th, 1241. The day 20,000 Mongols invaded Europe. The day arrows met steel. The day chivalry died screaming in a Polish field. Liegnitz wasn't a battle. It was an execution. And Europe never forgot.